Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and welcome back to a brand new movie review. I'm Chris Garner, joined tonight with Naomi to give my review on
Ooh.
Mowgli, Legend of the Jungle. If that is indeed what we're calling it, I think that's the final title they've settled on now. This is a film that's gone through many, many titles, including but not limited to Jungle Book Origins, Mowgli, just on its own, Mowgli, Legend of the Jungle. I think it was originally called The Jungle Book as well. It's gone through so many titles and gone through absolute production and development hell, which I'll talk about in my review.
I think they should have called this Lord of the Rings in the Jungle.
Yes, and we were just discussing this in that it is pretty much the entire supporting cast of Lord of the Rings / The Hobbit meets The Jungle Book, and that's essentially what it is.
You can't, and you're just like, it's Smaug!
This is the Andy Serkis directed live-action adaptation of Rudyard Kipling's All the Mowgli stories from the original source material, The Jungle Book. This is currently on Netflix. It debuted on Netflix today, in fact, and it did get a very, very small limited release at the theatre, I think, in late November. This is a film that sadly has been absolutely shafted by, number one, the studio, Warner Brothers, for not having faith in it, and number two, mostly I'm blaming Disney for this one. Not a cool move, Disney, but we'll get into that because it's a lot of dates and complicated numbers and things like that, and I was never good at math.
Didn't Disney do this when, like, you had Swan Princess come out, Anastasia come out? They were like, oh, we're just gonna re-release these films at the exact same time. Oh dear, it's at the same time as you.
It's a very weird phenomenon that doesn't happen very often with films in the movie year. The biggest one that I always go back to, and there have been more since then. The biggest one I can remember was when A Bug's Life came out, and then Ants came out with DreamWorks. You had two animation companies, two of like the biggest prolific animation companies aside from, like Disney at the time, making an insect / ant movie. It was very, very strange. There have been more examples since then, but that's the one I always come back to. And unfortunately, that was the case with this movie. So obviously, for anyone who doesn't know, this is the story of The Jungle Book. This isn't your Disney version of The Jungle Book, though. So don't go into this expecting any bare necessities, any I want to be like you, or anything like that.
Don't expect Baloo in a Huda skirt.
No, unfortunately, because that is one of the greatest moments of my life when I watch Jungle Book. This is much more closer to, in theme, in tone at least, to the original Rudyard Kipling novel. Now, I will say outright up front, I haven't read the original book. I did sort of gloss over some of the premise of some of the chapters, and it does seem like it is fairly close. They've shuffled a lot of plot points around and story beats, but I guess that's just the necessity of adaptation. So yeah, let's get into this thing. So this was actually a film I was incredibly hyped for, and I remember seeing, because I always like check what films come out every year, and you go onto like Wikipedia and you type in I don't know, like 2016 in film, for example. And earlier on that year, we had Disney's live action version of The Jungle Book. And then that very same year in October, we had Jungle Book Origins. And I was like, oh, what's that? And I clicked it and it was like, this is the Andy Serkis directed version. And I'm a huge fan of Andy Serkis. His work on motion capture is absolutely unparalleled. And
I mean, duh.
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty much started the whole thing. I know probably Jar Jar Binks was technically the first motion capture character in Phantom Menace.
His name!
But, I mean, Gollum absolutely put motion capture on the map to the technology that it is today. I mean, it's used in pretty much every big budget blockbuster now. He's gone on to do the likes of...
Lion King say what? What?
Yeah, right. I mean, he's gone on to do the likes of King Kong, Caesar from the Planet of the Apes trilogy. I mean, he's incredible, not just with motion capture, but an actor himself. He's great, and he's made the transition now into directing. He was the second unit director on The Hobbit. It's just fascinating to watch this guy's career, how, back in Lord of the Rings, he was this unknown name. He was just dressing in like this weird scuba diving outfit with cameras stuck on him, crawling over rocks.
You can't forget the dots.
The dots, like crawling over rocks, doing silly noises. And now, he was promoted to second unit director of The Hobbit, an immense trilogy to work on. And now he's into directing. I believe he's been working on this for a very long time. He's made one other movie before this called Breathe, which was the, oh God, I'm drawing a blank on his name.
Andrew Garfield.
Andrew Garfield, thank you. It was
had Claire Foy in it as well.
Yeah, it was the the biographical movie that he made, and I don't know the ins and outs of it. Like, clearly that was a passion project for him as well. I mean, it'd be weird for a director to take on a project that isn't some kind of a passion project. But to me, that was more, you need to prove your chops with this movie first, like a smaller personal biographical movie, before making this big budget
in
blockbuster
kind of the same
epic.
way of the writers from Little Mermaid wanting to do Treasure Planet, and it was like, not yet. You need to do this one. You need to do this one. This one. This one. This one.
You need to prove yourself, absolutely. And I mean, seeing the guy in interviews and stuff like that, and talking about the Jungle Book and adapting this thing, the guy's passion is there. Like, he clearly had a huge mark for the Jungle Book and wanted to get this story across with this more serious tone, this darker tone that he's going for. And I'm reading here that Warner Brothers Pictures announced that they were working on a live-action version or an adaptation of the Jungle Book film in April of 2012, so going quite far back. I believe it started principal photography in the March of 2015. They got all the cast together around 2014. Once they decided on a director, this was going through many different iterations. They originally wanted Alejandro Inarritu, but he was busy with Birdman and The Revenant, so he couldn't do this. They also talked about getting Ron Howard before Andy Serkis signed up. Now, this is where the interesting part comes in, because 1 year after that, in 2013, a little company called Disney announced that they're working on a live-action adaptation of Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book in the July of that year.
You know what? I've heard of them.
So a little over a year, they announced that they're making one. Now, to me, that sounds like they're rushing out a product ahead, because obviously Jungle Book is a well-known name. Now, not necessarily from like the original book, for example. A lot of people might not know the themes and the events of what actually happened in that book. Believe me, it gets so dark in the original.
There's some dark shit in there.
And this is kind of, I won't say it's a problem because I love the film, but it's just something that has naturally happened, as with a lot of Disney films. When you say the name Jungle Book, people immediately go to that Disney film. That's immediately what people think. They think of the songs, they think of the characters.
That's pretty much the same with any literature or kind of story that is now in the kind of
collective consciousness,
public domain.
Yeah.
So things like Alice in Wonderland and stories like that, you're always going to think of the Disney version first, which is annoying.
And I mean, like, the Disney versions came out decades ago. And I mean, they're still watched by kids today, and, you know, they have sort of like perforated the collective consciousness at this point. So that's kind of where
I think Pocahontas was this weird 18-year-old who went around saving white men.
Exactly. So it's just a thing that has naturally happened with the Jungle Book, which is unfortunate for any other adaptation that tries to take on this project. And, you know, fair play to Andy Serkis for like believing in it and trying to get it out there. This was originally meant to come out 2016, as I said, under the title Jungle Book Origins, which I thought was a terrible title, because if you've got a Disney version of Jungle Book earlier in the year, and then you then bring a movie called Jungle Book Origins, that just naturally sounds like a prequel to me. I think it would to anyone. Any casual moviegoer that didn't know there was going to be a different version of Jungle Book would be kind of put off by that. So
it just makes me think of Wolverine Origins, and no one wants to think
about
that.
God, no.
We don't need a fucked up Deadpool.
So Warner Brothers delay the movie to 2017 in order to distance it and give it a bit of time in between the Disney incarnation and this one. They also claim it was to work on the special effects some more, but, you know, like, companies seems to do well in and of their own right. I know that it takes a long time to like render good CGI, like the poor CGI you see in films. You can clearly tell like they didn't have enough time to work on it and things like that. So 2017 eventually becomes pushed back to 2018 with a title change called Mowgli, which was then changed again to Mowgli Legend of the Jungle, which they finally settled on now, but we'll see what it is when the DVD of this thing comes out. Maybe they'll change it to something else.
Maybe something like Live Jungle Repeat or something like that.
Yes, that's probably the last film I can think of that changed its name so much. It's so surreal. And then in the I think it was July of this year, we learned that Warner Brothers dropping the film, and Netflix had purchased the rights for the worldwide distribution of this film. And, Andy Serkis went on record saying that he's very excited that Netflix has taken Mowgli and things like this. And he now doesn't have the pressure of people comparing it to the Disney version, which, it wouldn't be the first time that Andy Serkis has had to defend Warner Brothers' poor decisions and things with the Hobbit trilogy, for example.
Lest we forget about those.
So it's a fascinating insight into how this film came about and the competition with Disney and everything like that. Essentially, Warner Brothers got cold feet and they knew that it would probably tank or people would compare it to the Disney version. That Disney version is still fresh in people's minds. And I think with the live action version, even the Disney version, and this was touted as a much darker adaptation of the source material.
Yeah, I mean, the advertisement which I watched just before this was like, prepare for the darkest retelling ever. And I'm like,
right. And
please.
The thing is, the Disney version, although it did contain some of the songs, I've even gone on record saying that the songs felt very out of place in that film because that film did feel very realistic and dark at moments. King Louis, for example, like
Christopher Walken singing "I Want to Be Like You" will probably be my best moment out of any film that I've watched. Just going oopie doo, I want to be like you, ooh ooh. It needed more cowbell.
That would not be one of my favorite moments. In fact, that moment came completely out of nowhere. That was Disney knowing that if they didn't put that scene in and put that song in, people would there'd be riots in the streets. It just felt, and
but this they paired it with Christopher Walken.
I know. And now I guess this is where I get into the actual movie review of this one. I've kind of taught almost the length of an entire review just on the pre-production of this movie and everything like that. I think comparisons to the Disney movie are going to be unavoidable, and that's partly what I said in that people are just gravitate so much towards that Disney version now and know it so well that anything, if it misses it out or has a different way of telling the story, it's just going to alienate people. And this is the thing. I think the biggest problem with this movie is its tone, in that it starts off very lighthearted. It almost feels like a Disney version. Like if the Disney version had never come out and this came out in its stead, I'd go, okay, this is like a sort of more, grounded adaptation of the Jungle Book. But then it kind of skirts the line with almost Watership Down level violence and blood, which is fine, but it doesn't pick a tone. It feels like it's too scary and too dark for little kids, but then it's too tame for adults. So I'm left thinking, what is the audience of this film? And it did leave me with a very hollow feeling. And, I wasn't even a huge fan of the live action version of the Disney version. Out of the two, I think the Disney version is probably the tighter film and more entertaining film. But obviously that is made by Disney. Although I think that both versions do have the same problem. I think there was a tonal issue with the Disney version, especially when it came to the songs. It didn't feel like it meshed with their realistic live action version of Jungle Book. And the same kind of goes for this one. It doesn't push the violence hard enough, and it doesn't push the really dark themes of the book. In fact, I think it completely misses out one of the most darkest parts of the book, which is, I think, the elephant stampede through the man village at the very end to get their revenge and just decimate the whole village. That's not in this movie. It still ends on a very, very happy ending and a very uplifting kind of Disney-fied ending. So that's really where I'm coming down on this movie. Warner Brothers pulled it because they were expecting millions lost at this movie. So selling the rights to Netflix and giving them and just putting it online, it's saved them the hassle and any bad press. Because Lord knows Warner Brothers don't need any more bad press at the moment. So yeah, it's just... I was really looking forward to this movie as well, and I don't want to rag on this movie because, I love Andy Serkis, I admire his passion, and that comes through in the project. You can see that he really believed in this thing, but it seemed like so much money was fired at this thing, and the result is kind of hollow. It feels... The movie's about an hour and 40 minutes, which... probably is the right amount of time, but when I saw that running time, I was really surprised. I don't know if a lot of material's been cut. I don't know if the fact that Warner Brothers were pumping money into it and then decided to go with Netflix, if they had to cut it down for a more TV-focused audience. I don't know.
For the way that you said that, where it is very mishmash, that reminded me of when I saw Suicide Squad. Now, I'm going to be the weird one and say I like Suicide Squad, but the editing was the biggest flaw in it all, because they really did... Oh, fuck. Sorry, my laptop decided to sleep for a bit.
Oh,
but apologies, folks. But like the tone was just everywhere, and there wasn't really any kind of consistency. And I think it was a fight between both the director and the studio. And I think that's the same thing that's happened here. Look at that, it's Warner Brothers again. But like the way that you said that, like it's dark and gritty, but at the same time just light and fluffy. I think they were like, we want to do our own version, but at the same time be a competitor to Disney. And that's been its biggest flaw, because even when it was doing the cartoons and having Looney Tunes against Mickey Mouse, they had the more balls. They didn't care about being family friendly. They just cared about getting good comedy out, even though some of them are under the Sense 11, but we don't talk about that. But yeah, I just feel like from the way you described it, they had some really confused studio heads, especially now you said that they had little faith in it. So I think that kind of just like choppiness is probably like worried that they won't get any money because everything's all about moolah these days.
The thing is, like, in terms of the actual editing of the film, like the composition and construction of the film, it feels like a complete movie. Like, I didn't feel like, oh, that's been left out, that's been cut out, or anything like that. The movie plays A to B to C as a fluid movie. I didn't have any problems with the editing. I had a problem. It was just on the tone. The studio needed to, or the scriptwriter, or whoever it was, or Andy Serkis. I don't know who to pin the blame on here. I just always pin the blame on Warner Brothers because it just seems like the most clean option. They just needed to commit. They either needed to say, we're going to tell like another light-hearted, sort of like family-friendly adaptation of the book, you know, not necessarily the Disney version. Like, you can cut out all the songs and cut out some characters, make it a bit closer to the book, but make it, you know, like, I think this is a PG-13, which, you know, kids see anyway, so it's not like it's a dark version.
Oh no! Oh, a PG-13, it will ruin their minds.
Or they needed to go, you know what, we are going to make this a violent, miserable, dark, bleak, distressing adaptation, just like the original source material is.
And you know what? I want an adaptation, a live-action adaptation that has the balls to be like, you know what, we don't care about the rating system. We don't care about, like, having to get the little kiddies and the families in. We just want to make a good adaptation which is as loyal as we can make it, because I can understand that there has to be some changes when you're adapting book to film. But we make it so that it is gritty, it is dark, but it's everything that was the book and more. Not just like, let's play the safe route and see if we can get the money, you know?
And the thing is, like, there are moments of this film where you do see those darker moments and you think, like, if they'd have gone all out with that, this could have been an incredible movie. When originally you hear that 2 Jungle Book movies are coming out in the year, like, maybe that is a stretch and maybe the delay was justified in that regard, but you could have made this like a complete contrast between the 2 films. You could have really gone to town with this movie in terms of its tone and its themes and everything like that. And there are some scenes in the film, and I don't know whether to spoil one in case people haven't seen it already, but one's in the trailer where Mowgli's locked in a cage in the man village, and Bagheera the panther comes up to him and he's basically saying, like, I was caged once, you need to win their trust, and then you'll, you know, be set free and you can integrate and then you can be free, essentially. And Christian Bale delivers that beautifully. And I wasn't a big fan of the actor who played Mowgli in this film. I think that's just a kid actor thing. It's very, very rare that you get like a solid kid actor. And I didn't even really like the kid they got for the Disney version either. I thought his delivery was very stilted. Then again, it must be very difficult for not just a kid actor, but any actor to interact with something that isn't there. I don't know if they just did like the whole green tennis ball on what they did, or if they did have the
get Dobby again on the tennis ball.
Yeah, so I don't know what they did. I don't know if they had someone there for the eye lines or like a kind of green foam head that looked like a panther, just something.
Or did they just have Andy Serkis in an outfit again, just wandering around everywhere?
Just crawling on all fours. It's entirely possible. I don't know. I'd actually love to see the behind the scenes. I think they did release a featurette on YouTube. I don't know if that was more about the visual effects and stuff like that, but I'll have to check that out. I think I missed that one when it came out, but I might go back because that might be fascinating to watch, actually, from a filmmaking standpoint. But there are moments like that where it's, you know, it's great delivery, and it toes that line where it's going into those more deeper themes that the Disney version doesn't go into. There's another moment in the film, and this isn't really spoilers. I'm going to keep it as vague as I can. But when Mowgli goes to the man village, And we see him integrate him in the man village more than we do in like the Disney version. Like there's a whole, and this is where it became fascinating because it felt like that's when it finally became its own thing, and it was doing its own thing where you do see Mowgli as this feral child then being, tried to be civilized by the people in the camp. And there's this hunter there who's tasked with killing Shere Khan, and he's a hunter, but he's got like his own creepy personal menagerie in there. Like he doesn't seem like he's a scientist, but he's got sketches of animals and dissection and animals like preserved in jars and everything like that, and heads of animals. And Mowgli basically has a moment like the Ace Ventura moment from When Nature Calls, when he enters the room with all the animal heads and he just freaks out. He has a moment like that. And he sees the severed head of one of his animal friends from the jungle previously in the movie. And that does shock you. I was like, oh shit, like this movie is going in a direction I didn't expect it to, but they're very few and far between. And I guess this is a good point than ever now to talk about like the actual animals in the film and the CGI themselves. The CGI is incredibly hit and miss in this film. Within the first 2 minutes of the film, I have seen some of the ropiest green screen work I've seen in a movie in a long time. It tends to be whenever you've got a live action human actor completely surrounded by green screen. When they're in the heart of the jungle, like when they're next to an animal, that's fair enough. But when the entire environment is CGI as well, the way it was lit, there was no depth there. There was no believability that actor, that character was in that environment. The surroundings and the floor of the way they was like moving across the screen was completely unnatural. And that really did turn me off the movie within the first 5 minutes. And I thought, oh God, like I hope this is Andy Serkis here with his Imaginarium. Like I hope that the CGI picks up soon. And it does in some parts. Bagheera looks fantastic. Shere Khan. The one that looked the ropiest to me was Baloo. And I think the reason for that is that Andy Serkis really made a push for the animals to preserve as much of the actor's facial structure and expression as much as possible, which works for like humanoid characters, for example, like Gollum, even Caesar to some extent, because obviously like a primate is very similar to a human. So you have that expression there. When you've got a bear and it's coming out with like Cockney Andy Serkis voice and it looks very cartoony, even if you watch the trailer, you can see that it doesn't look quite right. The CGI rendering they did for Baloo in the Disney version, for example, that was voiced by Bill Murray, looked more like an actual bear and still was authentic, in my opinion, when even with the voice of Bill Murray coming out. Baloo was the one that kind of kept taking me out of the movie every single time. I love the wolves. They did look incredibly ropey in the trailer, but it looked like they improved the CGI when it got to the movie. But let's talk the performances. I loved Christian Bale. He doesn't do his Batman voice, which is nice. He does
trying to be a death metal singer.
He does talk in a low gravelly voice, but it's more of a whisper. It's actually kind of what I wish the voice of Batman had have been, more than like the growly one, which is weird considering he's playing a panther in this movie and he could probably get away with a growly voice more in this film.
He doesn't have Christopher Nolan egging him on. That's what it is.
Maybe that'll be the next adaptation of Jungle Book. Maybe it'll be Jungle Book directed.
Where'd the child go? Where?
And like, I don't know, Tom Hardy can voice
Shere
Khan or something. Kate Blanchett plays the Python Car, and she sounds exactly like Ethereal Galadriel. She plays a character, the snake, who can see the past, the present, and the future.
Galadriel?
I just kept thinking, I see many things, things that were, things that are, and some things that have not yet come to pass. I was like, she's playing the same character.
I swear Andy Serkis was just going down his contact list, like his phone, and basically like, that'd be good.
Pretty much. But that's nice if he has built like a working relationship with these people. Then that's fair enough that he calls upon them, and they did great. Like the voices are great, the performances are great. Kate Blanchett, the character of Car plays more of a role in this movie. She's not necessarily an antagonist. She's almost like this kind of ethereal creature of the jungle. Like they say that she's been around for many years before anyone else, and she'll still be around the jungle. She's almost like the beating heart, essentially, of the jungle, and she like predicts people's futures. She's almost like a soothsayer kind of character. She does intervene and she does help Mowgli, which is more than like the Disney version, for example, where Car is actively trying to eat Mowgli pretty much the entire movie. And even the Scarlett Johansson one from the live action Disney version really didn't play.
She was just there.
It was Disney ticking a box that we need this character somewhere in the movie, but they didn't really have another place for her. It just felt very out of place and almost kind of pointless. So I like what they did. It was just very strange to see like a soothsayer kind of fortune-telling snake in the movie, I guess, with hypnotizing powers. But then I read the excerpts from the book, and it says that the snake hypnotizes people in that. So what do I know? The one I wanted to talk about the most was Benedict Cumberbatch as Shere Khan. The second time Benedict Cumberbatch has played a character called Khan within the last few years.
Khan!
And yes, there is a moment in the movie where Mowgli does shout into the jungle, Khan!
Oh, you are joking.
He shouts it about 3 or 4 times. It's hilarious. It's not quite the same delivery as William Shatner, unfortunately, but, you know, it's there. It's at least better than Zachary Quinto's delivery in Star Trek Into Darkness, but then again, what isn't?
They must have known. They must have known. I mean, seriously, 3 times? Are you actually fucking with me?
It's when Mowgli. It's towards the end of the movie where like Mowgli's calling out Shere Khan into the jungle, like "Come and get me" kind of thing. He's like Arnold Schwarzenegger at the end of Predator, like he's like covered in mud and he's like, "Rah!" He's like holding a knife.
It's got that level of ridiculousness, like at the beginning of Heavy Rain, where you're just walking around the mall going, "Jason, Jason, Jason." It's like, fuck off.
But yes, Benedict Cumberbatch. He's Benedict Cumberbatch. It's very easy to recognize his voice. He's pretty much playing exactly the same character as Smaug. In fact,
I saw the trailer, and as soon as like he came out, I was like, "It's Smaug!"
Yeah, like I did a trailer reaction as well to the first trailer that came out for it, and that was exactly my opinion as well. And you know what? I don't hate Benedict Cumberbatch, but he is almost typecast for me now as these generic villain. It's like we need a villain for a movie. Get Benedict Cumberbatch, and he'll do like
we need a villain, and he's got to be British. And if you can't get Ben Kingsley, then you get Benedict Cumberbatch.
But now I think about it, and I'm thinking that they've got Chiwetel Ejiofor to play Scar in the live-action version of Lion King. Benedict Cumberbatch would probably suit Scar more with his voice. Why didn't
they switch them around?
But then the other half of me is saying I'm kind of tired of hearing Benedict Cumberbatch's voice now. Do something different. So I don't know. Like he comes on the scene. He's got his like low. You can tell they've like done some audio manipulation on him.
Basically the same settings as Smaug.
Pretty much. But even as Smaug, and like especially as Khan from Into Darkness, he really does go hammy and over the top with the way he enunciates words and things like that. Mostly with motion capture.
Is Khan.
Like how in The Hobbit is like. How he's like barrel rider, and you see him in like the behind the scenes, and he's like, there's going for it, and then there's going a bit too over the top with it. But every time he says "man" in this film, like "man cub" or "man village," he kind of roars at the same time. He's like the man, and it's just no, you don't. I know that you can like. I get what his thought process was. He's like, right, Shere Khan is a tiger that detests and hates man, like he wants to lay waste to man. He wants his revenge on Mowgli. He's bitter. He's full of hate towards them, and I'm going to bring that out every time he says the word man, like it sticks in his throat. But it just sounds so silly, and it just sounds like he's trying too hard to be villainous.
No to it.
It's, and then I was like comparing it to Idris Elba's voice. This one sounds a lot more villainous. As I said, like Benedict Cumberbatch is kind of like cliched, like now placed into that placeholder now as generic villain voice. But Idris Elba felt it just sounded like Idris Elba. It felt very cool and calm, but it didn't sound like Shere Khan to me. The best Shere Khan to me is always going to be the original Disney version. He was this George Sanders. He had this very foppish, upper class British, I'm better than you, superiority, stiff upper lip complex.
I'm going to close my eyes and count to 10.
Yeah.
It makes the chase more interesting.
For me. Like, that's great. And that's when I think of Shere Khan, that's what I think of. And that's not just the Disney version to me. That's how I like to imagine Shere Khan.
Shere Khan is meant to be one of those characters which is like fun, but also very threatening. And with George Sanders, you got that balance right, because he was able to like just be cool and collected, just like, you're fucking with me, bitch. But then like
in like a click of a fingers, like he could kill
like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Fuck.
Yeah. And you could even say that Shere Khan in this movie is very similar to the character of Smaug. I mean, Smaug is such like a prolific literary character. in that he is essentially a psychopath. Like he will monologue, he will get into your head, he will completely demoralize you, and he can kill you at any moment.
Does he call Mowgli a barrel rider though?
He doesn't call him a barrel. Mowgli rides no barrel.
No barrel rides will be made into a theme park in this movie.
So it's a real mixed bag for me. Like the CGI is very hit and miss for me. Sometimes the environments look great. As I said, when the humans are interacting with the CGI environment, it just completely takes me out of the movie. And the Disney one had that to an extent, but I think they probably had a lot more budget behind it. They had a lot more, manpower essentially to get that CGI out there. So it didn't look quite as bad. It looked a lot more it was better integrated essentially, despite the kid playing Mowgli was essentially on a green screen the entire time throughout that entire movie. And even the human aspect, like Frida Pinto was cast in this movie as well. I absolutely love Frida Pinto. I think she's an absolutely tremendous actress. She doesn't really say much. She has like kind of one scene in the movie and that's it. She just kind of looks on and glances after that. I don't really know what else.
It basically just stand there and look pretty.
Yeah, pretty much. Like she washes Mowgli's hair in one scene, and that's pretty much the extent of her character. I really honestly don't know what else I can say about this film, in that I was very much let down by it. When I knew that this was coming to Netflix, I thought, you know what, it's still going to be exactly the same movie that it was going to be in theaters. I trust Andy Serkis. And don't get me wrong, like I don't hate Andy Serkis, or I'm not going to like never see his movies again or never trust the guy again. I admire his passion and for, sticking with this project through thick and thin, through all the troubled production, everything like that, because that's really got to suck. If you've got a passion project and you have to jump through that many hoops to get this thing out there, then at least it's on Netflix and at least the product is out there. But it just left me feeling hollow a bit. It didn't leave an impact with me. It felt like it was very tonally inconsistent. And that's a real shame, because I do think if he had have just committed to this film, and again, I don't know if this was a studio involvement wanting it to be more appealing and family friendly and lighter in tone, I think if they'd have gone all out dark with this one, I think I would have enjoyed this a hell of a lot more. And that's not me just being bitter and horrible and twisted. I genuinely think that the material is there and they could have done that justice. And I think they could have done real justice to the original Rudyard Kipling novel. I guess I'll just wait until the next adaptation in the next few years. I was saying to you before we hit record, I don't know how many more adaptations of The Jungle Book I'm going to see in my lifetime. I've seen
To Jungle, to Book.
I've seen the Disney animated Jungle Book. I've seen Jungle Book 2. They did a live action version of Jungle Book in the 90s, which I don't know if that was also.
They got Mowgli as an adult, and he's meant to be all cool and edgy. And it's like, no.
There was that one. There was the other Disney live action remake. There's this one. So I've seen 5, and only time will tell if we're going to get any more of these.
Here's the question: are we going to get one that is actually close to the book?
I like to think so at some point. It's just the question of adaptation. Like, all the films that I've seen, for example, like Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, I like to think The Hobbit will get a remake at some point. We'll get a readaptation, whether that's going to be on TV, whether it's going to be the Amazon series, whether it'll get a film. They'll all get one at some point. It's just a matter of time. But I will say Netflix has been hitting it out the park recently. We did a review for The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, which was a phenomenal movie, the Coen brothers' latest movie, which went directly to Netflix. It's nice to see that Netflix are getting these bigger budget movies. There's probably not a big budget film, but the Kurt Russell Santa movie, the new Christmas movie, has gone up, which I know has been getting a lot of traction, has been very, very popular with people. It's almost like these big films that we expect to see on the big screen are coming to the small screen with Netflix. And I think that's great. And I really hope Netflix stick around even when Disney do their new streaming service. Hope there's not too much competition there. Even though I will never forgive Netflix for cancelling Daredevil, which I'm still not happy about.
It's basically like ticking off everything, and Jessica Jones is in the corner just like, help.
Really quickly before we sign off, we just had a comment by I.th, who's put, just saw the new movie, it was really good. I won't say it was awful. I think it's a very average movie. Currently on Rotten Tomatoes, based on 60 reviews, I believe it's currently sitting on 55%. I think that's fair. Probably 55 to 60, I would give it. Very, very middle of the road. if you've got nothing else to watch, if you're curious about it, if you have been following it, or if you just like the Jungle Book, I'd still say check it out. Like, it's an hour and 40 of your time. Like, what's that? Just a little over an hour and a half, fairly short movie. But yeah, part of me is still very disappointed as to see that this was the final product. But I'm interested to see what Andy Serkis does next. So that'll do it for my review on Mowgli, Legend of the Jungle. Be sure to comment, subscribe, let me know what you thought of this movie, as one person in the comments already has. How would you compare this to the other movies? Do you think it deserves to be compared to the other movies? Were you happy with it, essentially? What did you think of the performances? Anything Jungle Book related, please do drop me a comment. Once again, huge thank you, Naomi, for jumping on with me tonight. You know, I always appreciate it. You know that I prefer with movie reviews to talk to someone, even if it is just me talking nonstop for half hour. Thank you for being a great listener, and thank you for asking me questions. I always do appreciate it.
No worries. I mean, it's always fun to do this, especially since most of my time is sitting in front of a Mac just endlessly clicking. So...
So now you can endlessly listen to me prattle on about a Netflix Jungle Book movie for like 40 minutes. So as I've said, if you've just discovered this video now, we do movie reviews, we do trailer reactions, whole bunch of movie stuff, and December is a very, very packed month. I've said before, we've got Mary Poppins Returns, Bumblebee, we've got Aquaman, we've got the PG-13 cut of Deadpool. There's so many movies, Wreck-It Ralph 2, to name a few. December is a very packed month, and I'm going to do my absolute level best to get movie reviews out for all of them. There'll be trailer reactions as and when big trailers came out. I just got done with one today for Avengers Endgame, so please check that out. And yeah, I think that's everything we've announced so far. Hit the bell icon as well so you stay updated with all of our content. That'll do it for us right now, and until the next video, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.